Here's a fact about me in case you didn't already know. June is my birthday month. As a result of this, I decided to treat myself this month when it came to the movies I watched. Therefore, in this ranking, there really aren't many bad movies, besides the obvious of course. So most of the films on the lower end of this list are actually really great, but just not my absolute favourites. However, alongside having basically no bad or mediocre films, you may have also noticed that there are also significantly less films for this month, with only 12 instead of the usual 14 or 16. Well, that's because I rewatched quite a few movies this month as another way to treat myself. Naturally, I rewatched Puss in Boots: The Last Wish again because I finally got the Blu-ray, and this time my parents saw it and they also loved it. I also rewatched Whisper of the Heart on my actual birthday, so that was quite nice. Finally, I actually watched the number 1 film in this list twice in the same weekend, so look forward to me talking about that film later. Anyway, as for the films I watched this month which I hadn't already seen earlier in the year, I saw The General, A Fistful of Dollars, Come and See, Clerks, The Devil's Backbone, Moonrise Kingdom, Whiplash, Isle of Dogs, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, Pinocchio, A True Story, yes, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And without further ado, let's talk about the only crap movie from this month.
Father, when can I leave to be on my own? I've got the whole world to see.
I think we all remember where we were when the trailer for this movie was released, and we all lost our minds at how hilariously awful it was.
Is that actually his voice? You're trolling, right?
Pinocchio: A True Story has become one of the most celebrated bad movies of recent years because of how hilarious the Pauly Shore dub is, and I can totally see why, as this dub is legendary.
Let's go, Tybalt! Great adventures await!
However, I'm going to be honest when I say this. I didn't have as much fun as I hoped when I finally got around to watching it. The first half an hour was absolutely legendary, make no mistake about that.
Mamma mia! It wouldn't buy!
However, once the funny haha meme moment started to subside and Pauly Shore's voice became less funny as I got used to it, I was left with one of the most boring and generic children's films I've ever seen. I have seen practically no videos talking about the story of this film, as they instead just focus on yassified fruity Pinocchio, and I can totally see why. The story is about as dull as dishwater. So basically the circus are robbing people by encouraging people to see the circus, which will leave the houses empty, and they need Pinocchio because he's the star attraction. Alongside that, Pinocchio wants to be a real boy! Yeah, that's basically the extent of the plot, and it's as interesting as it sounds. I was completely nodding off by the second half, and just wanted it to be over. I'm sorry to say it, but this meme movie didn't have enough memes for my liking. Forget saying that I'd rather have watched the Del Toro Pinocchio to this. I would have honestly rather watched that one Pinocchio scene from The Last Wish over and over again for 94 minutes straight than watch this movie. At least that one single scene has good animation and compelling characters, whilst this has nothing but memes. Overall, I'm glad I watched this over the Disney remake.
Welcome to an accurate simulation of
convenience store clerk.
The jump up in quality from yassified Pinocchio to Clerks is immense, so don't worry if you thought that I dislike Clerks, as I don't. I actually thought it was a solid, fun movie throughout, which I enjoyed quite a bit. The script was generally pretty strong. I liked the way the French New Wave was used for directing inspiration to tie into Randall's job at the video store, and in general the film was really funny, especially during the scenes with Jay and Silent Bob, as well as the legendary discussion over the ethics of the second Death Star explosion. However, the reason it's not higher on the list is for a similar reason to my low rank for My Neighbors the Yamadas last video. I'm not a fan of vignette films like this. I prefer singular continuing narratives. Whilst Clerks did feel more like a complete experience than the Yamadas, it did still feel pretty aimless at points in my mind. I'm sorry, I can't help it. However, I did still like the movie overall in spite of that.
So do you have any new movies in?
Bulletproof Vest! Great flick! Great friggin' flick! The guy is brilliant!
One movie opinion which I've never spoke of before is the fact that I love westerns. I don't know what it is, but something about them always feels so cool to me. I felt this way as a kid, and I still feel that now. However, despite loving the feel of western movies, many classic westerns which I saw as a kid were due a rewatch, so I decided to rewatch the Clint Eastwood Dollars trilogy, starting with A Fistful of Dollars. Yeah, this movie is a banger. Just like with every other western I've seen, this movie is just so damn cool. I genuinely can't think of a better word to describe the film. It is just an awesome time from start to finish. The action was amazing, Clint Eastwood was amazing, the climax was phenomenal, and I still love it despite the fact that I expected my mind would immediately gravitate back towards Back to the Future 3, as the gunfight there was directly lifted from this film if you didn't know. Luckily, this film is so enjoyable that it stands strong on its own. Alongside how cool this film is, the characters were really strong. Obviously, as I said, Clint Eastwood was amazing, but some of the side characters like Silvanito and Peripero were fun faces, and the villains in the Rojo Brothers had a threatening presence because of how brutal they were. Whilst I did find the film a bit slow around the middle and the story was a bit too basic for my liking, I still really enjoyed this film. And this is all without me simping over Ennio Morricone, aka one of my favourite composers of all time. I could go on and on about his music for hours, but we've still got many films to get through, so I'm going to have to cut my simping short. Overall though, Ennio Morricone's music gives me testosterone, and the rest of the movie is good too.
22 campers have signed up to spend 8 weeks right here at this crummy old summer camp.
I think the best way to describe Moonrise Kingdom is cozy. It is a warm, cozy movie which I enjoyed quite a lot. It's got a simple premise, but it is quite endearing thanks to the characters. Sam and Susie have a sweet and entertaining main relationship, and some of the side characters like Scoutmaster Ward are also great. Alongside that, I really like the setting of a scout camp. This is entirely due to personal experiences, as I am a former scout, so the setting feels quite nostalgic for me. The overall direction of the film is fantastic, as is usual for a Wes Anderson film, but alongside the visuals, I do think this film has interesting messages on mental health and childhood, through the way Sam and Susie are portrayed as having quote-unquote emotional problems, despite the fact that they are good at heart and not deserving of the constant mistreatment they always receive. I found it really intriguing and it definitely resonated with me somewhat. Whilst there were some pacing issues here and there as well as a few story problems, the film was overall a really good time which I'd recommend checking out.
And then that crazy country over there, you know, Japan.
From one Wes Anderson to another, Isle of Dogs is another really great film from Wesley, in spite of quite a few flaws. Whilst the plot is a bit messy at points and the villain is pretty uninteresting, I just enjoyed the rest of the film so much that I didn't mind these flaws, which led to me actually preferring it ever so slightly to Moonrise Kingdom. The main thing I loved about this film, outside the phenomenal animation, direction and cinematography, which is to be expected from the guys who made Fantastic Mr. Fox, was the characters, specifically the dogs. The humans were kind of bland. I just found these guys really compelling. Not only did they feel strangely real because of the natural feeling dialogue at many points, but the voice actors brought so much to them. I have to say that I think Ed Norton needs to do more voice acting because he absolutely killed it. Obviously he wasn't the only great voice actor though, as Bryan Cranston was also fantastic as Chief, aka the best character from the film. I really did love the development of Chief in the film, as he went from being a proud stray to someone who realises the importance of affection. His growing bond with Atari also feels really natural, and it was just really captivating to watch. Whilst the other characters weren't as deep as Chief, they all had such a great dynamic that I loved watching them, which thus made the adventure really enjoyable. Yeah, I just had a really good time with this film. It had great characters and great visuals, as well as some interesting themes of corruption and propaganda. I definitely recommend checking this out, especially if you love Fantastic Mr. Fox. Buster Keaton is becoming a regular face on these lists, isn't he? Just like with May, I watched a feature film with him as well as a couple of shorts. If you're curious about the shorts, The Goat is a very fitting name, as that short was absolutely amazing and proved that Buster Keaton truly is the GOAT. I also saw The Love Nest and The Haunted House as well, which are both enjoyable but not top tier. That's basically all I need to say about them. As for the feature film I saw, The General was really fun, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't find it a tad overrated. I find it weird that many people say that Steamboat Bill Jr. was a bit slow, when I didn't feel that at all, yet I did feel that with films like The General. Whilst it was definitely really enjoyable throughout, there were quite a lot of slow moments in the middle where I started to drift off, and the second half lacked enough to help it stand out from the first in my opinion. In spite of that though, I was still always hooked back on the film by the fantastic train hijinks which are still impressive today. Not to mention, I did find the story of this film quite interesting. Once I put aside the fact that I was essentially rooting for the Confederates to win, which isn't exactly a good thing. If you're a Keaton fan, then this is a must watch, as it is one of his most iconic films, but I wouldn't call it a favourite from him in my opinion.
Oh shit! A ghost!
The Devil's Backbone can honestly best be described as Guillermo del Toro's prototype film for Pan's Labyrinth, but with ghosts instead of monsters. I'm not dissing the film when I say that though, as I did still really like it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this shared a lot of the same plot beats as Pan's Labyrinth. You know, they're both set around the Spanish Civil War and about a child who has to move to a new location where they put up with an evil man who has their own selfish goals while also discovering supernatural fantasy elements. I will say that I do prefer Pan's Labyrinth because the fantasy elements felt more natural to the story and themes compared to The Devil's Backbone, where the ghost story felt kind of irrelevant to the overall narrative. However, despite everything, there's still a lot to love about this film. For starters, the supernatural stuff with the ghost kid is still fantastic despite being irrelevant, and it's really creepy but well done. Second, I absolutely loved the characters once again. Whilst the villain was a bit bland, the kids were all fantastic, especially Jamais as he had so much depth to him. Also, what is it with Del Toro films having doctors as the stand characters? Finally, Del Toro's sense of dark fantasy and the loss of childhood innocence at the hands of fascism is absolutely present here, and if you're a Del Toro fan then this is a must watch. Overall, I thought this was a really great movie, but Pan's Labyrinth is a more refined version of it at the end of the day.
You're a girl dragon! Oh sure, I mean of course you're a girl dragon!
As you know, I saw the first 2 How to Train Your Dragon movies last month. I didn't have time to finish off the trilogy then, so instead decided to watch The Hidden World this month. I really love this film. It's a big step up from the second movie and ends the trilogy off perfect in my opinion, and I really don't get why some people don't like it. Not only does it retain the same feel as the other 2 movies whilst also having a fun relationship between Toothless and the Light Fury, but this movie also has by far the best villain of the trilogy. Grimmauld is literally everything Drago wanted to be. I can actually take him seriously unlike Drago, and he's got such a slimy, sinister edge to him. I also love how he's basically the opposite of Hiccup due to being the Night Fury killer. It leads to a great dynamic between Grimmauld and Hiccup. However, the part which really elevates the film is the ending. It is just such a satisfying end to the trilogy which really hits you in the feels and leaves the trilogy off on such a great note. I love this movie and it would be even higher in my overall ranking if the characters outside of Hiccup and Toothless weren't sidelined hard. Either way, I still don't understand why y'all are dissing it.
The Eastern Front of the Second World War was brutal for all that endured it.
I'm not even going to try and make any jokes about this film as that would just feel wrong. Come and See is one of the most brutal, devastating and hard to watch films I have ever seen. It doesn't sugarcoat any part of the Nazi invasion of Belarus. It shows off every aspect as raw as possible and we see it all through the eyes of a naive child who's learning the true horrors of the war. It meanders a bit at the start admittedly, but it all builds to some truly shocking scenes with imagery which will last with you forever. Despite being an incredible movie though, you could not pay me to watch it again. It's definitely a film everyone should watch because it is so important to be aware of these atrocities so they never happen again. However, definitely prepare yourself if you're going to watch it. I'm not going to say any more though, as I think it's better to just watch yourself without any prior knowledge. Anyway, let's move on to something a bit lighter.
It's beautiful!
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse absolutely lives up to the original. I mean, come on, you all knew that. Whilst I did admittedly slightly overhype it as soon as I finished watching the film at the start of the month, I do still love it now. Obviously the animation is absolutely phenomenal throughout, with the differing art styles providing so much variety and making the film a real treat for the eyes. I love the ways the colours were used to reflect how the characters are feeling, and in general it is just some of the best things CG animation has to offer. Although I do have to say, it wasn't worth the crunch times put on the animators. I'm not going to hold this against the movie itself as it is still fantastic and behind the scenes issues can't change that, but just note that I wish this wasn't still a problem. Anyway, outside the visuals, the story for this film is still fantastic. It continues the character of Miles brilliantly, and this is especially prevalent through the twist with him near the end, which just made him an even more interesting and compelling protagonist. However, he's still got a great level of relatability to him, which especially works as a result of the time the film spends in Miles' universe, where he's able to just develop as a character. The other characters were also fantastic, especially Gwen, who got some great development. Oh, and the new Spider-Peeps were also great. I thought Goldilocks and the Three Bears were the most unapologetically British characters in an American animated movie, but then Hobie came along. Also, the villain, the Spot, made me realise how much I love Jason Schwartzman in just about everything I've seen him in. There is a lot more to say about this movie, but because it's so new, I don't want to risk spoiling anything. So instead, let's move on.
Spider-Pig does whatever a Spider-Pig does.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is still a masterpiece half a decade later. Not only is this movie revolutionary for its animation style, which directly inspired films like The Last Wish, but it's just a really great movie outside of that. First of all, the film is still absolutely hysterical throughout. The writing is so freaking sharp, and characters like Spider-Man Noir, played by the legendary Nick Cage, and Spider-Ham, played by the also legendary John Mulaney, both absolutely crack me up. However, whilst this film is hilarious, it also nails the dramatic moments. The slower character moments hit me hard, and that's because I love our main character. Miles Morales is such a great protagonist for this superhero story because he's relatable, and his struggles and inexperience is something the audience can connect with. Plus, his relationship with his dad is so compelling, and all of this builds to the message of the film all about taking a leap of faith, which culminates in that phenomenal scene when Miles finally takes the leap. This is the best scene in any superhero movie, and it's not even close. Yeah, this movie is absolutely still worthy of all the praise it's garnered over the years. I may still prefer The Incredibles in terms of superhero movies, but this is a close second. However, it's still not my favourite from this month.
Alright, gang, Whiplash.
It seems like this year is the year where I've discovered my true favourite films. The thing is, whilst I still love films like Back to the Future and Shaun of the Dead, they're not exactly films which connect with me that much on a personal level. However, my current favourites are films which actually do resonate with me. Obviously you all know how I feel about Puss in Boots by now, but alongside that, there was Whisper of the Heart from last month, which I found to be one of the most relatable movies I have ever seen. And alongside all of that, we have the best from this month, which is a film I watched twice in the same weekend, as I said at the start, and is now one of my new favourite films of all time. That film is Whiplash. Before I talk about the personal stuff though, I first want to go over the aspects that make Whiplash such a well-made movie first and foremost. I'll start by saying that the overall direction was fantastic. This is most notable during the various scenes of the bands playing. Something about the way they are shot and edited makes them so captivating to watch. What also helps to make the band scenes captivating is the fact that the music throughout the entire film is absolute fire, and I am constantly re-listening to various tracks like Whiplash, Caravan and the Overture theme which is currently playing. Another separate thing which adds so much to this film throughout is the cinematography and lighting. The harsh yellows on characters like Fletcher add so much to his fiery rage and contrast the softer blues often associated with Neiman. If you don't think the colours add much to the film, then try watching the original short film without the colour and you'll see how much is lost without it. Alongside all of that though, the acting from both Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons as Andrew Neiman and Terence Fletcher respectively is absolutely god tier. You feel every bit of pain and fear felt by Neiman, but you're also absolutely crapping your pants whenever Terence Fletcher starts yelling. J.K. Simmons is already a scary guy, and this movie takes that to the extreme. And this leads me on to the personal stuff. As you all know by now, I am a creative person, so I relate to any movies which revolve around the arts, even if it's something like music as shown in this film. I can put myself in the shoes of Neiman as someone who wants to succeed in what they love and always wants to improve themselves. However, in this film, we see Fletcher abuse and break down Neiman as a result of his abusive teaching style. This causes Neiman to push himself beyond what is healthy, and this is exactly what Fletcher wants. Fletcher wants to push his students beyond what they are capable of, because in his mind,
There are no two words in the English language more harmful than good job.
the ideology of Fletcher actually makes him somewhat understandable, but at the same time he is still an abuser and crosses the line at way too many points. It's understandable to push people further, but it's not understandable to lob a chair at them. It's an interesting ideology portrayed through a misguided character, and that is what makes the film so interesting. However, the ending of the film, which I won't spoil, questions everything the film has led up to, and poses a lot of interesting questions from an unbiased perspective to let the audience decide where they stand on the matter. The reason the film resonates with me is because it gives a raw depiction of someone suffering for their art, which is a problem I am always trying to avoid. However, at the same time, the film also shows that it is always important to push yourself, but you have to do it in a healthier way than how Neiman does it at the hands of Fletcher. Whiplash is almost like a more miserable version of Whisper of the Heart. The messages of following your dreams in a responsible way are surprisingly similar across the two films, but Whisper of the Heart is a lot more positive and hopeful, whilst Whiplash is arguably more depressingly realistic. I know I've gone in a lot of detail about this film, but that's because it is a film you all need to watch right now, because it is absolutely incredible. I love it so much that Terence Fletcher even showed up in a dream I had the night after watching this movie. That says a lot. If you're wondering, Fletcher spent his time in my dream yelling at Mark Corrigan from Peep Show. I have very weird dreams. Anyway, that's all I want to say about Whiplash at the moment, but I guarantee I will talk about it again at some point in the future. Overall, June was certainly a lot more consistent than May. Whilst there was one stinker of a film I saw, the rest were really solid. Despite the small number of movies, I still saw a lot of fantastic films, including a new favourite of mine, and overall this was a satisfactory birthday month movie-wise. Anyway, because we're halfway through the year, I would like to thank everyone who has been watching this series. I've really enjoyed making it and your appreciation makes my work feel worthwhile. So thank you so much for watching this video and this whole series. Take care everybody, and goodbye.